Welcome to the webinar. I'm Kevin McKenzie, Head of Product Marketing at Prodigal. Today, we're going to take a look at lessons from 2022 and also how to prepare for next tax season now. So to help us do that, we have a lineup of speakers from InDebted, FFAM 360, and also Prodigal. So we'll introduce them very shortly. But just before that, I'll let you know that in the agenda, we're going to take a look back at what happened last year. Also talk about why now is the time to start planning for tax season 2023. And then last, we'll discuss how a collections intelligence solution is going to be able to help you with all of that. So just two quick notes before we get started. Wanted to let you know that the presentation will be recorded and we'll share that with everybody after as well. So if you want to watch that back or share it with your colleagues. Also, definitely feel free to type in questions at any time as they come to you. You can go ahead and type those questions into the chat panel that's over on the right side of your screen. And also, just so you know, that's set to private. So other than yourself, the only one who can see that will be me and the other presenters. So feel free to type in those questions. We'll pause for questions a couple times as we're going throughout the presentation today. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Marc Cataldo. He's going to go ahead and introduce himself as well as our guest speakers. Welcome to the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. And thank you all for joining us here. So I know a number of people here obviously on the call, but I've been in this industry since 2004. Those of you who know me know that I genuinely like to...
Looks like Mark may have frozen.
Oh, no. That's always the fun of a live event, isn't it?
Yes.
Hey, it wouldn't be fun if we didn't have something that we could use on Saturday Night Live.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully we will get Mark back with us. So in the interim anyways, he was just starting to give his introduction where he's been in the industry 18 plus years, has a background in disruptive technology, talking things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, speech analytics. So a whole lot of good background there. And then we'll go ahead and move on to our first guest speaker who you've met casually already, but we have Tim Collins with us from InDebted. Would you like to give us a little bit of background on yourself and your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for doing a great job, Kevin and Prodigal, for getting this set up. Thank you for muting Mark so that he wouldn't talk much. That's always impressive. Matt, it's a privilege. It's a privilege and honor always to be with you. But yeah, it says here 20 plus because 30 plus looks bad. And so I just say 20 plus years in the industry, and currently at InDebted as their chief compliance officer, really focused on the compliance pressures that we're seeing now. Obviously, we have a new CFPB. I call it a new CFPB as it's the administration is very expansive, covering everything. In the just a little bit of background about me, I've basically had every experience I possibly could, from working at debt buyers, being at collection law firms, and also being at a creditor. Did some time like it's prison. Did some time at a creditor. It wasn't prison. I just want to say that. But very active in the industry and super excited about what we're seeing, and that we're having the conversation today about the debt collection environment and tax season. Now is the time to be thinking about the tax season because there's a lot of things that are going on. We want to make sure that we're prepared for that. So thank you, Kevin and Mark, for not saying that.
Nice. And it looks like Mark was able to rejoin us. So I'll just move on to our third speaker here, which is Matt from FFAM 360. Would you like to introduce yourself and explain a little bit about your organization?
Sure. Matthew Maloney, co-founder, president, CEO of the FAM 360 Alliance of Companies. Much like Tim, and in all seriousness, I've been professionally in the industry for 20 years. We actually hit our 20-year anniversary this year. But for me, I've actually been around. Yeah, exactly. But for me, I've been around the industry literally my whole life. Kind of a legacy play here. Family was in the industry in prior companies that they owned and operated. So I've seen a lot of changes, in some cases third party, and then of course now first party within the industry. So the FAM 360 Alliance of Companies, in summary, we're a hybrid organization. We serve a diversity of different markets, and we serve really the entire credit life cycle of accounts. So whether it's in healthcare, financial services, and fintech, the insurance subrogation industry, and and other consumer finance segments of the industry. Those are the groups and market segments that we serve. So I think that this is first and foremost, thank you again to Kevin and Marc and the Prodigal team. This webinar is appropriately timed as we look ahead and get prepped as an industry for tax season with bated breath here. I hope that we have a nice tax season, and I know we're going to look back at this last year's tax season and see how what the outcome of that was. But I'm hoping, and I think many in our industry are hoping, that this coming tax season is going to be a little more robust than the prior.
Great, thank you. All right, so now I'll turn it back over to you, Marc, to kind of tee up this next subject around a look back about what happened in tax season of 2022.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not exactly certain what happened there, but hopefully everyone can hear me and we're good to go. So yeah, I mean, I think in talking to people in the industry, I think we'd all agree that this past tax season was unlike any others. There were a lot of, I call it a perfect storm. It was the first quarter really where we were implementing Reg F. A lot of agencies were struggling through that and adopting some of the new regulations. There was the Hunstein opinion. Agencies were still working through either 100% remote or some form of partial remote. And then obviously with the actual tax returns, a lot of people just were delayed and didn't even file their return until well after the 14th. So there were 15th. There were a lot of different elements that went into this tax season that I don't know if they'll translate over to future tax seasons. So I think, I'm going to pass it off to Matt and Tim because you guys were in the trenches here, but perhaps you can share some of your experiences that you saw and what was different for you this season versus previous seasons.
Yeah, thanks, Marc. I'll take first pass before I hand it back over to you. I think one of the things that we saw, was really the how well prepared our vendors were for Reg F, because it was especially potentially on the letter vendor side, right? It was like, oh, we've got to make all these changes, all these new data fields. So this Reg F implementation was a huge, massive focus. And for some, it was we're testing it on December 1st when it went live on November 30th, right? So there was this tremendous amount of pressure and buildup. And what I heard in the industry is that some didn't make it. And so that left them in a situation where they weren't sending letters. Some actually pivoted to sending emails. I got a lot of calls, a lot of questions around, hey, can we do letters? Can we do the model validation notice versus via email? Because we can't get our letter vendor there. So, I mean, we had all these hurdles, not only trying to train our teams internally, but we also had to help get our vendors there and get the resources that they needed there, especially for some of the legacy systems that are out there. It was a fairly big lift. They hadn't seen a change in this format for letters probably for even decades. So we also saw some of our clients not being able to meet the requirements. They couldn't get you the itemization information that you needed to put in there. So there was a pause in placements. Was a big factor for some. So these, just from a Reg F perspective, that was, enough. And yet we throw on Hunstein, which comes out, and everybody's like, oh, I've got to be my own mail vendor now. I got to bring mail in house. Where do I find a mail machine? Nobody's done that for decades, right? It's just like, yeah, we used to have a postage machine. We would feed the envelopes through it. Yeah, and some of that old stuff.
Break it back out.
Yeah, exactly. We put it in a closet. So we go get this, and we just got to get money back on the postage machine, or we get some guy there just putting the stamps on as it's coming through. Those alone would have been enough. And yet we were still trying to deal with the remote. And are we coming back? Are we going? What are the states doing? There's still a lot of uncertainty as it relates to states and the regulatory requirements. Some states like Maryland did a great job and came in and changed their statutes. Minnesota's working on it, but others are still, no, you have to have the same level of oversight as if they were in the office, but they can work from home. What does that even mean? And then I think just finally, just a couple things, the tax credit stimulus for the child credit, while it was beneficial to consumers, it actually impacted some when it came time to file their taxes, because you needed that documentation to say, okay, I received this amount of tax credit. And so we saw this delay. It caught up, But we saw this delay in filings in the beginning because people were waiting to get all their documentation, or they were trying to file and they couldn't file because the system wouldn't let them hit submit, because not all the boxes were checked about all the income that they knew. So we saw that eventually get rectified. But you think about, 2022, I mean, it was just a massive amount of change, and we came through it. I think most agencies had a pretty decent tax season, even though we didn't have the massive stimulus we'd seen in past. But anyway, I know, hopefully I didn't take all away all the thunder there, but I know that you guys had some specific stuff that you were working through too, and saw some of the impacts that you had.
Yeah, I mean, it was much of the same themes that you're talking about, both on a macro level and then kind of inside. I think there were 6 overarching elements for our organization that we saw, and that's both internally as a servicer for clients, as well as, of course, on the other side of our business, we're a purchaser of debt. And so we can see with what our outside vendors, whether they were agencies or attorneys, were dealing with. But number one is we actually saw a decrease, a pretty substantial decrease, if you look year over year, in right party contact rates. And so that was an element that played a big role for us. And theoretically speaking, we believe that was because people were back out more in the community as opposed to 2021. Right, 2020 tax season, it was kind of on the tail end of that obviously everything shut down. But in 2021, it was full steam ahead and everything was shut down. So our right party contacts were higher. In 2022, they were cut pretty big. We offset that because of some digital engagement strategies that we had, and we'll talk about that. But number 2 for us was, in some way, shape, or form, stimulus was kind of drying up, and there was that elongated, as Tim talked about, that kind of elongated curve of once they finally got through how to file their taxes and get returns in. It finally caught up, but it was flat the early part of tax season. We saw. Third, as Tim mentioned, combating Reg F reality, so internal retooling, and that relates to agent training, systems. Making sure we were, from our perspective, internally, our software provider did a really good job alongside with us and their other clients of getting the systems prepared, but not all of our other vendors, if you will, did that. It wasn't, they weren't quite as succinct. So there was some delay there. And then just internal retooling on, I talked about training, but the compliance aspect of it, like making sure nobody wants to be the first one through the door, because the first one through the door always gets beat up, right? I mean, that's right. The reality of it. And so there was that piece. And then, of course, the external retooling. Tim, you did mention it, but for us, creditor, getting them acclimated, our creditor clients, getting them acclimated to it. They didn't have all of the things. Truthfully, I found that they were further behind than we were. They just weren't fully prepared. And so, I mean, we had 3 major clients that had massive delays in play. They just held on to the inventory. So we missed that what would have been a traditional window of tax season. And then fourth, this is outside of the creditor markets, but combating the No Surprise Billing Act, which went into effect in January of this year, which is really on the healthcare market side. The CFPB came out and made some statements about that earlier in the year, about how they were going to have some enforcement activity around third-party collection agencies that weren't handling, even if their clients weren't in compliance with the No Surprise Billing Act. And then again, Hunstein, even though that was an 11th Circuit thing, there was the ripple effect for that. So that was a big thing. So I think that overall, tax season, I mean, some things eventually caught up, but it was flattened, right? There wasn't the traditional spike, bell-shaped curve, if you will, going into it and then coming out of it. So that's what we saw.
No, and it sounds like you pivoted pretty well, Matt, with some of the initiatives that you put in, especially as it relates to right party contact and that kind of stuff. So hats off to you and your team.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. So now we'll move forward to look at how we can then prepare for tax season of 2023. Marc, do you want to start us off with this topic?
Yeah, so we can kick this off. If you've attended any of the conferences, which I know a lot of people still have some restrictions on that, there's just a lot of talk around the impending surge in delinquencies that everyone's kind of preparing for, and it's going to come in waves, and it's going to affect probably many of you differently on this webinar, depending upon where you are in that placements that come. But generally speaking, there's a lot of concern around placements and staffing up and being able to prepare for that. So I think kind of the genesis of this webinar came from, talking to some of our partners and clients to understand what type of technology is in the industry that can help you prepare for the rise in delinquencies, for tax season in general, just to be as optimal as you can be to prepare for unforeseen events like we saw last year. And so those are kind of the elements that I think that we're talking about. And Tim, I'll kind of pass it over to you to you're doing what you're seeing and how you might prepare.
I'm gonna take it.
Yep.
Yep. Sorry, Mark, you froze again there for a second. So, yes, I think I'll leave the debt placements conversation a little bit more for Matt to discuss, because he's got a closer group there. But I think staffing is one of the biggest issues we've seen. We've had the Great Recession, the Great Resignation. We've seen the workforce it's a little bit more difficult. Interestingly enough, in this recession, we have a flattening of GDP, if you will, maybe a little tip down, but unemployment is down significantly, and it's still down. And so normally when you see that recession, you see GDP drop and unemployment go up, and we just haven't seen that yet. And so that tells you there's still a lot of people that are looking, that need workers and staff. So it's going to continue to be a challenge. There's not enough agents that are out there, and there's not enough. Which is one thing. The other thing is there's not enough people to help you bring on new tech. So I try to bring on some data scientists or analytics folks right now. Very, very difficult to be able to staff those positions. So compliance, very, very hot. It's because of the regulatory environment we're in. So it's even difficult to hire those. When you're thinking about staffing and hiring, it's like, how do we fix that? We got it across the organization as a whole. How do we have to be able to solve for that? I think one of the things that we've really done at InDebted is focus on technology. Where can we use technology to be able to fill in some of those gaps? A lot of collections is ripe for systematic solutions because it's the same thing over and over and over again. And so where automation can come in and technology, we can dive down a little bit deeper in that. I know that you, Mark, guys got some great products out there like Pro Notes, which helps you need less agents because the system is writing the notes for you, by way of example, and Pro Assist, which helps you with those customers, getting them the right answers from that agent, which allows you to ramp faster. So you don't have that expertise that you needed to have to get them on the floor. You can actually get them on the floor a little bit sooner, and they've got those things that are going to help them with their efficiency and effectiveness, which will take a little bit of that pressure off as it relates to staffing. I will say that unless you've been asleep at the wheel, from a regulatory perspective, the biggest issue we have right now is information security and privacy. The CFPB has come out with multiple bulletins. We saw this start with the CCPA in California, and that's only growing. We've seen Utah, Virginia, all these other states are making data privacy and security number one element. And the CFPB came out in a bulletin a few weeks ago and said, if you're not protecting consumers' data, it is a violation of that Consumer Financial Protection Act inside of itself. So it's another stream where they're going to be able to come at you. So making sure that that data is protected, especially if you're taking calls over the phone and you don't have the ability to redact that PII that needs to be redacted. It's another one of those things that's there. But Matt, let me kick it over to you and then we kick it back.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, kind of like real estate, location. I mean, collections is all about strategy. We have to look at this from a holistic view. You touched on a lot of these things. And I think everyone knows this, but remember, every consumer out there, particularly the debtors or the consumers that we're collecting from, they have a finite amount of income, right? And so outside of combating inflation and how consumer price index and that's up, and gas, although it's come down a little bit, all of those things, there's still a finite amount of income that these consumers have. And so part of the strategy has got to be, it has always been in tax season. Can I be one of the first ones to get to that customer? I need to be one of the first people, because they on average, they may have 6 other debts that they owe that are in collection, right? Which is the statistic of the average consumer. If they've got one, they typically have 6 other ones. And so getting to that, and that's where, you know, strategy comes in. But first and foremost is preparing our clients. So we look at it from the mindset of, let's get out in front of this with our clients, this qualitative element, going to our client now, not in January, but going to our clients now and making sure that they are in sync with the recommended strategy that we have. And then, of course, training and capacity planning. Tim talked about it. Staffing, it's at an all-time premium and at an all-time struggle right now. And making sure that we have the best staff on these accounts to identify and prioritize the accounts that we want the best agents to work into service, right? Collections is still about contact. And this is where the technologies come in. Gone are the days of, because of Reg F, gone are the days of us smiling and dialing and trying to penetrate large volumes of accounts, right? Your strategy has to be succinct, and things need to be, the account inventories need to be segmented so that you're focused on the right accounts, because you only get 7 opportunities, 7 attempts to contact that customer, right, to that consumer. And so it's really, 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 really important that, and I'm going to give you an example here in just a moment, but that your segmentation as well. So on the scoring side of it, gone are the days of static scoring and segmentation, right? Let me go in a traditional, bureau-based score or non-bureau-based score. You score the accounts, you get the propensity to pay, and you focus on those. Those days are gone. If you're still operating in those realms, you're behind the curve. Today, it's all about dynamic scoring and really contact optimization. Tim knows about this really well. His group does it really well in optimizing those contact channels and how that customer wants to be contacted. So it's not just, does that consumer have the financial means to pay, but also because of the 7 and 7 rule and under Reg F, we want to make sure we optimize our opportunities on our outreach. Let's not blow an opportunity to contact that person. And so we're using tools that show, hey, what's the optimal time that this person picks up the phone? Does this person like to receive, or communicate via, an SMS chat channel or an email channel, as opposed to, say, a phone channel, as an example. So that dynamic-based strategy, it has to be in place. And this is where technology is changing the channel on how we manage in this industry. And you mentioned it earlier, and we use, in full disclosure to the audience, we use some of the Prodigal tools. We use their Pro Notes, their Pro Assist. I know on the Pro Assist in our process with that, we had a low of 6 and a high of 25% increase or improvement in effectiveness. I mean, even just the biggest effectiveness for us was the 2-step verification process. Was our 2-step verification process completed? And I won't tell you the numbers, but that was where we had more than a 25% lift there, but blended together through all the things, the high end was a 25% lift. And then on Pro Notes, we're saving right now about an average of, or the improvement was about 40% on average. And so we've reduced that post-call wrap time significantly. And that allows us, obviously, to make sure that for us at least, our best highly trained agents are able to move on, and we're able to touch, because again, we have a limited number of accounts that they can touch in a day. And being very strategic about it now, we're not just, blasting calls out there like yesteryear that you would see. So it's all about, that optimized process. So I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Yeah. And Matt, I would say, the yesteryear for some agencies is still, the game plan, and they're struggling,
right?
And they're seeing that piece, but it's great to get the stats on the Pro Notes. I really like the Pro Notes from a compliance perspective side, just because you start to see standardization of notes across the board. Like sometimes, we've always had TT talk to, Some people would use something else. And so you can start to create that standardization so that regulators in a highly regulated environment see, that the consistency that comes across, and there's not questions or, hey, we need to dig deep here because it says FU, which is follow up, not something else, right?
Not something else, just for clarification.
Completely something else. But you talked about it, right party, right channel, right time, right? And that changes every day, sometimes even hours. So that's why that dynamic scoring and everything is very, very crucial. But you can have all of those strategies, right? And you can be firing on those strategies, but if you don't have that customer self-serve, which is another way to help you with that staffing, if all of your payments have to come in by phone, then the only way you're gonna be able to take payments is by phone. And if you think your payment portal can take, that extra stuff, if you're seeing less than, 25, 30% of your payments being done on the payment portal today, then that is an indication that you don't have the payment portal the customers want. Because Matt, to your point, we get one shot at one time to be able to do it. And consumers are just like everybody else. They will go to the easiest, simplest way and that's what will make them decide to pay. They won't decide, I'm going to pay this medical debt versus this one because I like the anesthesiologist more.
Right.
No, it's going to be the ease for them. And that's one of the things we have to keep. You want to reduce your staffing, make sure that self-serve is also is built in there and ready to go for them. So.
Yeah. And I would add, it's a great point, Tim, but it's not even just the consumer, but it's your agents as well. They're going to go to the path of least resistance as well. And, I can tell you from being in, specifically in speech analytics and AI for the last 10 years, we could tell you everything that your agents are doing wrong. Convincing them to change their behavior was always the challenge, right? And that was, the hug or the hammer. How do you get them to change their behavior to affect you positively? And I think that's one of the things that was so compelling to me about Pro Notes and Pro Assist is we no longer have to rely on the agent wanting to change their behavior or being told to change the behavior. Technology has advanced to the point where it's just changing it for them. It's producing a note so they don't have to enter their notes during the call or spend 5 minutes in wrap after the wrap, and just making them available for the next call. And your top performers, they understand that it does make them more effective. It's going to put them on more conversations, and ultimately, if they're compensated that way, they're going to make more money. So technology has advanced to kind of remove some of those barriers that a lot of previous solutions and technology got away from.
Yeah, that's probably a great time. We'll just move on. We have a poll question that we wanted to check with the audience just to get the pulse of how people online feel, how they're feeling about their challenges. So I'll go ahead and launch that for us. Just takes me a second over here. And you will see that pop up in the audience on the right side. We'd just like to kind of get a pulse of everybody. What's the biggest challenge that you're anticipating? We've talked about several already, but staffing, productivity, regulations, placements. What are your thoughts on that? I can see some answers are already coming in there. I'll just give it a few seconds to make sure everybody who wants to make a selection does.
Yeah, why don't we do that? I'll just, dovetail off of Mark's last point. It's if an agent doesn't have to continually remember everything that they have to say, then that downstream when it comes to their QA review and that kind of stuff, because Pro Assist maybe potentially help them with that. The really good agents are very, very consistent about the things they do their verification, then they go right into balance in full. How do we get that today? And it's for them, it's very, very standard, and it's
fluid. It's fluid. Yeah.
It's fluid, and they do it very, very well. And it's just. And some of the other agents just don't have that. And that's where AI is assisting agents today to be able to do that. Hey, don't forget to ask for full balance.
Yeah,
that's right. And that kind of stuff. And so I think we're seeing agents. Before we had to train them on everything, and then we gave them a manual. Remember, it's paper.
Oh yeah,
some of you with paper.
Big thick manual.
big thing, and you had to flip through it to find everything. Today, all that information is now systematically uploaded, can be changed in real time. And you can take the two and say, okay, here's the issue we're seeing in our QA. QA in the future, which is today, by the way, is 100% of all calls, all chats, all emails, 100%. So now you get this real insight on what's happening.
Global view of all those chat channels from a QA perspective. Yeah,
absolutely. And then you take that data and you put it right into your Pro Assist. We're seeing this issue, so your AI assist can now make that one of those responses that needs to happen. Oh, be sure to, validate year of birth or something along those lines. But anyway, Kevin, I want to kick it back to you because we could talk about this stuff all the time. How's the poll looking?
Yeah, no, definitely appreciate that. Yeah, just before we move on from the poll, just to acknowledge the results here. So it looks like by a slim majority, it looks like productivity is the biggest challenge that's anticipated, followed pretty closely by staffing. Also, I did notice that we had a question coming in through the chat. And just a quick reminder on that point, anybody wants to submit a question, please feel free to type it into the chat. It is private, so only you'll be able to see your question as well as admins. So don't hesitate to type something in there. But it looks like we have one that probably direct this to you, Matt. And it's asking, as you speak to creditors, are they preparing more flexible payment terms and settlements for the upcoming tax season with increased debt levels for consumers?
That's a great question. We're actually flipping the script and not having them necessarily recommended. That's one of the first things that we just started recommending to them in our monthly calls with them is as we prepare for that, we'd like to basically rip apart their existing SLA for the number and what payment plans look like. And let's try to engage the customer, get them committed to paying at some level. And then later on, as things change, right, we get them to acknowledge, get them to pay, but as things change, then we can then essentially get them to settle out or change the payment terms. But again, it goes back to there's a finite amount of money here for every one of these consumers. There's a finite amount of disposable income, and we want to be one of those parties that gains a piece of that disposable income to pay for this past due account. So yeah, that's right now at the top in our top three. That's one of the top three things that we're recommending to our creditor clients.
And Matt brings a great point. In the past, it was always creditors telling us what to do from an agency side or a debt buyer side or whatever. And now you've seen this shift of value add. Yeah. Right, where we are able to take our data analytics team, our data scientists, and we slice and dice the data and come back to them, which they may be short-staffed or maybe they haven't thought about it this way, or they're not doing collections every single day like we are. And now we're able to go back and make those recommendations back to them. So, whoever asked that question, there's an opportunity for you to solidify that business relationship that you have by going back and saying, hey, here's what we think you should do and why. Why is very, very important to the creditor piece. And if you can provide actual data, that is incredible. You take something like this presentation, share it with the creditor, your creditor clients, and say, look, here's what happened in 2022. Here's what we're expecting in 2023. Here's what we're doing about it. That is a value add versus just waiting for that creditor to tell you what to do. Plus, then you run your business the way you want to run your business versus having that creditor tell you that piece.
Cool. Appreciate that. So we have a couple other questions that are coming in, but what we'll do is we'll just move on to our final topic, and then we'll have a quick poll and then circle back to that Q&A at the end. So feel free to keep those questions coming. We'll log them. And for now, we'll just move on to our final topic before that Q&A, where I'll turn it back over to you, Marc, to segue us into this topic.
Great. Thank you. I'm hoping that third time's a charm and there's no disruption here. And one of the pieces that we didn't talk about with some of the advancements of technology is we've gotten away from requiring you to have dedicated resources. And I think that's a huge element to the technology that you leverage. And when we look at conventional call centers today, and if you take an individual call, whether it's an inbound or an outbound, and you look at the life cycle of that call, technology has advanced to help every element of that call. So as that call is in flight, we call it Pro Assist, but it can be a hand on the shoulder for that agent to guide them either procedurally through a call based on who your creditors or vendors are telling you need to get through them. Obviously, all the compliance disclosures that need to be stated. It can help them model your top performers. So help them to use language and terminology that your best agents are successful at. and then help them through complex situations that otherwise they may not otherwise know how to solve. And more importantly, based on prompts that come in the language, it can help them understand language that should be used. So if someone says they've just recently been let go, or there's been a death in the family, and maybe that was a reason for why they missed their payment, it will prompt the agent to show empathy. So it's really residing next to them while they're on that call to help them be successful. Once that call does complete, it will transition right into Pro Notes, which, both Matt and Tim are leveraging this today. And what that is essentially sub 3 seconds, the system is populating a note standardized for that agent to review. So it's sat on the call, the transcription's worked in the background, it's pulled out all the salient points that are relevant to you and to your client, and delivered that to the agent. So they no longer have to spend 60 seconds, 120, whatever, the ability to edit that, make any changes that they want, and then hit submit and make themselves available for the next call. And there's a lot of benefits there. Some companies have huge issues with agents spending time in wrap. Other companies say, no, my wrap is fine because my agents enter their notes during the call. So you're going to fall somewhere in between. Maybe agents are entering in notes during the call, and that leads to longer calls and long gaps of silence that may affect the course of that call. This gives them that ability to seamlessly notate the call and get available for the next call. And then there's the conventional Pro Voice, which is automation of QA and speech analytics. When you're leveraging all three, it allows you to get to that point where you can model your top performers and push those prompts to your new hires in training to help ramp them up faster. And we've got customers that have cut ramp up time by 75% to get new hires ramped up. So to the poll question of efficiencies and staffing, those are all elements that technology can help you with to make your agents more efficient, be able to do one of two things: either have your existing agents get through more accounts than they normally could so that you don't have to staff up, or get through the same amount of accounts with perhaps less FTE and not have to backfill the natural attrition that goes through. So there's a lot of different ways you can maximize the solution.
Yeah, and I would just add that, that back to the poll, the staffing and productivity are basically one and the same, right? Increased productivity takes off staffing pressure.
Yeah.
You can increase staffing and it'll take down product pressure because you just have more people. You're just throwing more people at it. But I think because we got one of the questions that came in that just said, do we start to see this gap closing from your best to your worst? And to a certain extent you do, but I think it's one of the things that you talked about, Mark, is that the ramp time for an agent to ramp is much faster now. It used to be, it was very much like a hockey stick. It'd be this slow growth for an agent. And then the ones that really got it took off. And that's if you could keep them. We don't even talk about how Pro Assist helps with retention.
Yeah.
Because now it's like you've got a supervisor, a buddy, a person who's right there giving you that answer every single time. So you don't feel like, I can't do this job because I don't know what the answer is. Nope. Pro Assist is right there to be able to help you. And having it, I like the way you guys set this up in a circle. It's a complete circle, right? You get the notes, then you get the voice, then you can look at that data in real time and say, okay, here's where this agent needs help. Here's the training we're going to get them and to make them better. Here's the issues they're seeing. Everybody's seeing this across the board, so let's put that into Pro Assist. Let's give them a response, in Pro Assist. So even the best agents can see it. So I think it makes everybody better. So I think
it does.
This person to answer the question, your top agent just became better.
Right.
Your normal agent before just became better. So you're just continuing to raise that bar, which again comes back to productivity and staffing. You make your top people even better. You make bottom people even better with the less staffing that's there. So.
Yeah, we've always talked about if we could just replicate. I remember in years past we used to talk about if we could just replicate our best 3 or 4, top gun collectors. If we could replicate them, we'd be great, right? And this is what essentially this does, and it also affords the opportunity to not take that top collector off of what their job description is And this essentially allows them to have that side by side of the ProAssist component does. And so all of these elements together create that quote unquote optimized efficiency in the process. And that's what we've experienced on both the pre-charge off and the post-charge off side. So
Nice.
Yeah, and I would say, sorry guys, but the reason we're having this session now is because if you are thinking about tax season and you're thinking you're going to have a staffing problem or a productivity problem, now is the time to start to look at the technology solutions that are out there, so that you can test it. You can see, well, what's the impact of ProNotes? Because ProNotes is awesome out of the box, but it gets smarter and smarter the more it's used.
as time goes on, that's right.
Yeah, the agents train the machine. That's what we're going to see in the future. ProAssist is the same. Some agents are like, I know what I'm doing. I've always done it this way. This is who I am, right? And then they start to see their other colleagues passing them who are actually using the full value of ProAssists. So it's to one of the questions that's out there. You want to be able to see the lift that's going to be in your organization, and the sooner you start, the better. That's why if you're thinking about a technological solution for tax season, it's today. It's starting today and saying, okay, how do I get these on board so I can try them, get them trained, get them up and running, and extract that full value so that you're actually running when tax season is coming. Yeah.
There was a question out there that said, since we were talking about ProAssist, a question that said how much has ProAssist helped with faster ramp up for new hires? And there's not one answer for that, obviously, but if I were to bucket those or silos into two types of new hire, the lesser experienced new hire, we've seen it's cut their ramp up time in half. It's about 50%. The experienced new hire, it's cut their ramp up time by 75%. And that's, ballpark, but that's about what we've seen, which is significant. We can't have these long ramp times. And again, I want to set the expectation, one final thought here before we move on, set the expectation for the audience that whether it's this solution or other solutions, and Tim talked about it, the way that AI works is it gets smarter, but it takes time. It does take time. It doesn't just pop out of the box and work perfectly right away, because your organization has unique needs. We had unique needs, and it didn't work initially. In full disclosure, like we had to kind of work through some things in our insurance subrogation area versus our financial services area, and it took some time to ramp that up. So the sooner that you can engage and start to digitally transform or digitize your process with tools like these, the better, because it will take you some time to get there.
Yeah, and I often joke, every technology vendor out there throws around AI and ML like it's nobody's business. And the joke I say is that it's kind of like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Everybody's heard of it. Nobody really knows what it is. They may own it, but they're probably not using it correctly. And I think the theme is that technology continues to advance, and it's advancing rapidly. And all of the benefits of the new innovation out there are here to help all of you. It doesn't take long to stand up and implement. Doesn't take long to get your agents ramped up. And the ROI that you see is much faster than even 3-6 years ago. So it's the advancements continue to get better.
Yeah. Great. And now we'll go right back to Q&A, but we just have a quick final poll here to again get a pulse and see what people are thinking about. And I will go ahead and launch that for everyone. And we'll see that come across the screen.
I think we should put option E on here to have Mark get better internet at his house.
I can tell you honestly, I have been in this windowless basement now for 3 years. This is the first time I've ever had internet issues in 3 years.
It's a rolling blackout. It's a rolling blackout. It's a heat wave.
Yeah, we just have a guy outside your house who's just unplugging the cable and putting it back in.
Yes.
At random times. I'm not
rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is the new world. Still happens, the expectation. I mean, today it's amazing. You just watch kids come in. In the old days, people would have lost, their shit when that happened, right?
Oh yeah.
Today it's just like, yeah, the house is on fire, Mom. Give me a second, guys. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Yeah, dogs barking. Yeah, it's a the brand new norm.
I think
So,
then you kind of inadvertently hit on one of the questions where everybody's concerned about perhaps the challenges of a fully remote workforce or hybrid, some people coming back, may never come back. But do you have any additional thoughts on that, or how people can try to be more productive despite those scenarios, or any tips? And we'll give the poll question a few more minutes to get some answers while we discuss that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. Technology is awesome. So if you're listening to every call that's going on, you're going to be able to tell, not just from a compliance perspective, but also from a productivity perspective, how well that agent's doing over time. Are they pretty static? Are they working their 200, 250 accounts a day, whatever that number is for you guys? Or is that number starting to drop, and then why? There's other technology out there that's really, there's a company out there called collaborationroom.ai. They, you're right there with the agent. It's like you're in a Zoom the whole time with the agent, making sure that, they're supported and they feel. So I can see, remember the old days, we had those knock rooms where they had all the televisions up and you could see with the dialing and all the other stuff that was going on and who was on and who wasn't. Now we're going to see sort of that, I think, in this new virtual office or real office where you have like 30 televisions across and it's got all different people up there and what's going on and who's asking for help because they can raise their hand and that kind of stuff. So I think we're gonna be 100%, not 100%, but it's going to be a big part of what's required going forward is this remote.
We call it the virtual. We call that the virtual workspace, the virtual cubicle, in terms of like just as if I'm sitting on my floor and I'm the manager, if I'm a collection manager or a director or whatnot, and I can see all of my people with my eyes. Now I can see, and we use Collaboration Room AI, our Collaboration AI. We can see them now, right? We're touching them, and they can. It's not initially the response was with our people is, oh, whoa, wait a minute, no, I don't like that. But then they realized the other benefits that it gave to them, right? To help them get to where they need to get to and part of their ramp up. And so that's been a game changer. The other thing is, technology allows you today to see, we can see obviously post-call wrap-up time, gap times. All of our people are logged in onto to soft phones. And so we can see all of that. So gone are the days of, hey, he or she hasn't been on the next phone call for 5 minutes because they're, cooking eggs in the kitchen or whatever, whatever they're doing if they're at home. That's all gone, right? The technology allows us. We have a control center, and our managers, our CMs, are able to manage from that control center in real time, just like we're all talking right here.
Yep. Yeah. And to that point, with one last point on Pro Assist to both of your points, but our clients tell us that, especially the ones that are in a hybrid where there are some remote, that having Assist for their remote agents has been invaluable, right? Because they're not in a bullpen, right? They can't just stand up and ask for help. People aren't walking by listening to their call to tap them on the shoulder and help answer a question. So it is key for them to have the technology behind them, helping them guide through that call.
Yeah.
Which is a great point, Mark, because it helps with the supervisor support too. I think seeing things like Collaboration Room, the agents are now putting more pressure on the supervisors and team leads and that stuff. And having something like a Pro Assist can help with that, because it's like, hey, I've got a question. It's real time. It's like being able to walk around, like we used to do on the floor. You would go kind of slow up and down. Now it's like instantaneous. So that's
great. Just before we moved on, I just wanted to touch on that last poll. So it looked like the winner of the topic you'd like to hear about next time would be about turning metrics and data into strategic advantage. So trying to do more with that data you may already have to get insights from that and figure out what do you actually do with that. So it's not just data overload. So interesting thought on that one, that one came out as the top choice of what's interesting. Also did see that we've had some questions coming in while we were just talking, so I could address one of those. So perhaps maybe Matt, one question here is, what data can you provide to build trust with creditors? Do you have any thoughts on that or any experience with that?
Well, we're within our organization, our philosophy is we're an open book, honestly. And I'll just at a high level walk through. We're providing I wouldn't say we're not providing every metric, because you can have information overload and some of that stuff isn't meaningful. But we're setting, and I don't know if the question is what information do we provide, or was it a question of, can you give me some information to provide? But with that being said, I mean, every one of our creditor clients has their own, BI dashboard with essentially every metric that they want to see. And then we have our out of the box metrics, right? And that information is refreshed every single day. So it's not real time, but it's refreshed every single day so they can see that. And it's real time is not necessary. And then we have some of those clients that say, hey, that's great, I love that, but I'm not so good at logging in. Can I just get that emailed to me at 7:30 a.m.? I just get in front of my desk. It'll be the email that pops in. And so it's an email that prompts them to come into the dashboard, essentially. But our philosophy is this is a business partnership, right? And again, we do have clients, oddly enough, it's probably more in the healthcare area, where there's still this veil of secrecy and they don't want to share information with us and share information about the other vendors and business partners. But we think that just stymies success and growth with one another. It doesn't make any sense. We're essentially an extension to that creditor's process and part of their strategy. They've hired us for a reason. Let's be transparent. Let's show all that information. And likewise, we want information fed back to us. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's how we look at it.
I think it did, because it answers in a couple of ways. One is, they can see everything that they could possibly see that you guys can see. So transparency, I think, is going to be the key thing going forward.
No doubt.
Because we're called an agency for a reason, right? We're an agent of the creditor. That's where the agency even comes from. I think that to answer the question here, what data can you provide to build trust with creditors is getting them, as Matt talked about, the data they need when they need it in the easiest form. So it could be data that you've typically always provided, but it's now you've put it in a new format. Maybe it's in a dashboard. So it could be something as simple as that. Or what I like to look at is data that they're probably not necessarily looking at. So if you take a portfolio and you start working a portfolio, you enhance the data, you start to see, hey, the percentage of numbers that are wrong in this portfolio is significantly higher than others, or return addresses are higher, and you start to be able to share that information. Now that creditor can say, okay, or that debt buyer can say, okay, where did we get that paper? Who did we buy it from? We're going to factor that into our pricing next time, or we're going to factor that into our lending model as we start to lend out. So that information is crucial and valuable. It is a data game today.
It is.
Collection is all about data. And so where you can slice and dice it, it'll be the difference. So whatever they don't have, or getting them what they need when they need it in a format that they can use.
And you can see, and like, we love to show, migration of what their portfolios, if you will, look like. Right. So showing that over an extended period of time, you don't get as much migration in small areas, but over a period of time. And they're like, hey, why are collections going up, or why are collections going down? Well, here's why collections are going up, or here's why collections have come down some. Look at these variables. Look at these metrics. We're buying this data, right? We buy an incredible amount of data on all of our accounts, and some of it ends up being useful, and some of it isn't as predictive, if you will. But being able to share that with them also helps you with them, and helps them understand the performance levels of where things are at, or how their portfolio has changed. And some of them already know that, and some of them, don't know that.
Yeah, and I would add, we are engaged with creditors, doing just that from a data perspective related to agents, right? So we're trying to create standardized scorecards that can then be utilized downstream to their agencies, so that everyone's reporting back to them in the same fashion. But then it also gives them visibility into, hey, which potential agencies may be stronger at certain types of delinquencies or placements. So they can start to right size their inventory and place accordingly, given the data from the actual calls. So it's a great question, and we're trying to help on that as well.
Yeah, we see that all the time, because we're a digital first agency. So we have a lot of digital metrics, and so a lot of our clients now are saying, here's portfolios that are really prime for digital, and here's ones that are still heavily call requirements, are very heavy inbound calling, or whatever it may be. So it's continually evolving. So
Yeah, maybe a quick kind of a follow-up question. So when we're thinking about looking for new technology, you'd emphasized how we should start now, start sooner rather than later. How important would you say is speed to market for something like that to you, Tim, in particular in this case, or what thoughts do you have around that?
yes, so speed to market is the game changer in the space. So right now, if you were to, there's vendors out there that are going to take 9 months to 18 months to launch. Look what we had in tax season 2022. You're going to be solving for a problem today that maybe no longer exists. So that speed to market is a crucial factor, and it's got to be 2 to 3 months max, because every product that I'm looking at has machine learning in it. Machine learning needs to be taught, and so you have that. It has to be launched very, very quickly, so then you can help teach the machine, which helps refine the process, and just it continues to go. So it is probably the game changer for me. Whenever I talk to a vendor, it's like, and nope, apologies, Mark, but I don't ask the salespeople, because they'll tell me it'll launch on Friday. Yeah, we got that. We'll spin that up right now. We got a sandbox going right now. You're good. But the real question is, how fast is that? And stuff like, what you guys have built, and one of the successes that I think Prodigal has had is that speed to market. And that's going to be crucial going forward. You're going to beat your competitors. They're going to be still doing 9-month launches, and you've launched already, tested it, enhanced it, and made it even better for your organization.
Yeah, and I think secondarily to the speed to market is the level of effort that is needed from these agencies, and that has decreased significantly over time. I mean, I worked for some companies where it was a challenge to get someone stood up. Like you said, it takes a long time, and now things have advanced so easily, and companies now, it's not so cutthroat where they're partnering with other companies to make it easier to access their audio or their data to onboard someone, so that you can deploy this literally in weeks. And they are starting to benefit from it sooner rather than later. So it's really critical today. Where the rising tide raises all boats, as they say, right? So it's better for their customers and ours to be able to work together and get someone running as fast as possible.
That's probably
kind of where we start.
Sorry to mean to cut you off. It's probably a good thought to end on there, as we're just coming up to the end of the hour. That time flew by. I think we have enough content for another webinar with the two of you.
Sure we do.
But I just wanted to remind everybody, in case you joined late, this was recorded, so you will be able to watch this back. We'll send it out to everyone who registered probably by the end of the week, so look out for that replay link. And then before we do go, I wanted to take a second just to thank both of you for sharing your insight. We obviously couldn't do this without both of you, Matt and Tim, and also Mark as well. Thanks again.
Yeah, happy to. That was great. Thank you.
Nice.
A lot of fun.
All right. And of course, thanks to everyone who joined today as well. So have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you soon in a future webinar. Talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.